I'm Cheryl Paul. I'm a general reporter, sometimes presenter, in the office, out of the office, out on the field kind of reporter. I've worked for STV for 18 years. Before that, I worked in newspapers and I worked for BBC Radio. So I've had kind of an input into the three kind of different industries. So I've always worked in Aberdeen. This is very much my kind of home patch. And I report on absolutely anything that comes in, really. Well, it's quite a strange thing because I think most people think that, when they see a reporter on screen, oh, there they are, and it's all down to them. Not at all. I mean, really, there's a lot of staff and input that goes in behind the scenes before we even get out on the field. But when we're out in the field, we've got myself. Obviously, we have a camera person that you're working really closely with. And that's a really important relationship, actually. After a while, you start to work almost like telepathy with each other. And then beyond that, of course, we've got the satellite truck person too, operating the satellite truck if we're doing live inputs. And then, of course, we've got all the people back in the studio. I think one of the most difficult parts of this job is the lack of time that you have. So, quite often a story might break about 3 in the afternoon. Yesterday I was working on a story, it was a parliamentary debate that didn't finish till 5 o'clock, and we're on air live at 6 o'clock. So that lack of time can be quite frustrating, but you do all your own research, you do all your own script writing, you put your voice down yourself, you edit it yourself most times unless you're really up against it, and then we've got one newsroom editor who'll help out. But all the preparation is pretty much your own. You liaise with the news desk and you'll say to them, I'm thinking about going on this angle, what do you think? What do you think is important? So there is a dialogue, but it's very much down to you to decide what direction the story goes in, what angle you take, what prominence you place to certain aspects of the story, and also who you interview. Now, that's a huge part of it. You don't interview the wrong person. You want to make sure you've got a right kind of balance to it. So it's very much kind of down to you. The preparation, we prepare as much as we can, but the truth of it is that the deadlines in television are really tight, and quite often I'll think, oh, I wish I had another day to research this. But the truth of it is you don't, and you have to do the best you can do within that deadline, because obviously if you miss the deadline, it's of no use whatsoever. So it quite often is a bit of a compromise. Thailand, Holland, Belgium, France, Germany, all over Europe, Ireland, Shetland, Orkney, the Western Isles, Abbeymoor. So I go everywhere really, and I'm very lucky because it was probably when I was more focusing on business that I went abroad more, and we followed some northeast companies that were building business in China, and trying to do business in China. We followed a distillery, for instance, and a textile manufacturer, and we went on a trade mission with them. So that's why we were in Beijing. I went to Thailand to follow the story of Sandra Gregory, who was a drug smuggler, who was arrested over there. And where else did we go? The rest of the stories tended to be tourism type things. New York. I went to New York to interview Donald Trump in Trump Towers after he announced he was going to build his golf course here. So quite far and wide. I mean, generally it is within Scotland, but I could be sent anywhere from Orkney and Shetland. I went to the Western Isles in January because of the big storms they had, and I was supposed to go there just for one day and ended up staying 3 because I couldn't get back because the weather was so bad. So all over the place. People would think that I would say celebrities and politicians and interviewing the Prime Minister, which I've done a couple of times, going offshore with the Chancellor, going offshore with Tony Blair, meeting Donald Trump in Trump Towers. But actually, although they are all interesting, they tend to be so stage managed with so many minders and PR people, and they're very careful about what they say, and the whole thing's very choreographed. That actually, people say to me, gosh, what was Tony Blair like? I have no idea what he's like. I just know that these were the questions he was going to answer. This is what I was, he was sat down in front of me. You don't ever get to know these people, whereas human interest stories, real people on the ground, just way more interesting. I think it's quite funny because people that don't work in television will often say to me, I saw your report, it was 2 minutes long. What do you do for the rest of the day? And it's just like, you're like, infuriating, because, for these 2 minutes, you might have 3 interviewees. You need to go and find them, first of all, hit the phones, and, people aren't available, they're not in, they don't want to do it. You need to go and interview them, you need to drive there, physically drive there, find them, get them in front of a camera somehow. You need to do your research for your voiceovers in between that. You probably need to do a piece to camera yourself. You need to make sure you've got the right kind of pictures. You know, so if it's a story about council houses, rents going up, you need to go and film the council houses. You know, it's actually a really labour intensive kind of job. So a lot of it goes into that behind the scenes before you come up with your 2 minutes on screen. And then, of course, if you're doing a live, you also need to then find your live location, get permission to get in there, make sure you're there by 5 o'clock, have your script in your head roughly for what you're going to say in your live. So it can be actually quite a frazzling kind of day. And yeah, when you meet people who say, oh, all you do is 2 minutes work a day, you just think, oh, you're joking.